There is great excitement in the air as we anticipate the possibilities of opening our shuls and once again having minyanim together, praying together. If in fact the President makes an announcement this weekend relating to the opening of houses of worship, we are gearing ourselves to be so ready with all the precautions and the procedures in place to ensure the safety of our shuls. Our shuls will continue to be the safest place outside of our homes. I so look forward to welcome everyone back to davening together. This Shabbat has many exceptional features. For example, this Shabbat is the 15th day of Av. The 15th day of Av is mentioned in the Talmud, a little mysteriously, about being the happiest day of the entire year. And one of the reasons is because it was the day in which couples found each other in matrimony. The people found their partners to marry and found the beginning of a life filled with joy and happiness. It was a day in which the generation in the desert that had to pass away before reaching the promised land stopped dying on this date, the 15th day of Av. It's also a day, the 15th of the month, in which the moon is going to be in its fullest phase. If you look out tonight, you'll see a complete and whole moon in the sky. And whilst that happens every month, this month, coming from the darkness and the difficulty and the sadness of the days leading up to Tisha B'Av, the contrast is stark. And keyitron ha'or mitoch ha'choshech, and just as the light is ever much brighter when it emerges from the darkness, the month that is so associated with darkness, when we see the moon in its full phase, it encourages us to realize and to recognize that we do emerge with light and with brightness and with optimism, even from difficult moments of pain and loss. And it is this Shabbat that we read about the Ten Commandments. We read the holy, very powerful passage of the Shema, which we recite 3 times a day. And one of the details in the Shema relates to the study of Torah. V'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam. You will study the Torah, you'll teach it to your children, and you yourself will study the Torah. Interestingly, Maimonides presents the responsibility of studying Torah by first presenting the obligation to teach our children, and only then the obligation to study Torah ourselves. How can we teach before we've studied? Why would we talk about teaching children before we talk about studying the Torah ourselves? There are many advantages in adult study, because adults have developed minds. We have experience in life. We have been able to go through challenges and understand life better. So when we study, we're able to be much more mature, to have brains that have been developed and have capabilities way beyond. So adults can study much, much more than children. But there's also a disadvantage when it comes to adults studying. And that is that our experience often creates preconceived ideas, solidified philosophies, approaches that are established in our lives, habits that are difficult to break. We are putting information into predetermined files that have been decided before we begin the process of study. We don't want to rock the boat. We are concerned that the information that is coming is actually going to be a challenge to change lifestyle, and we'd rather put information into predetermined lifestyle than to think of the possibilities of change. So we lose our objectivity. We become so subjective. We begin to decide things by predetermined judgments rather than to judge how to change the decisions of our lives. We are putting information into our predetermined comfort zones rather than saying, how can I aspire to new heights? How can I develop? And how can I change? Children, by contrast, they are like writing on fresh new parchment. They are so open to processing information. They don't have preconceived ideas. They are open to hear and to change and to develop. So perhaps Maimonides is presenting the obligation to teach the children even before we study ourselves, because he's telling us how to study Torah. Study as you see children studying. Learn from the children, study the children, and see how they absorb information like sponges, ready to develop and ready to grow and ready to take on new great strides in life. Open minds. And let us study Torah like we see the children absorbing Torah. It is giving us a methodology and an approach to study that is way beyond the normal study patterns of adults. As we enter into this Shabbat, Shabbat of comfort, Shabbat of joy, Shabbat of new beginnings, Shabbat of illumination, let us put behind us all of the challenges and difficulties of these days gone by. Let us remain eternally optimistic. Let us open our eyes with the optimism and hope and innocence and excitement and enthusiasm of a child, so that we study the Torah and with the ability to bring great wealth and development and growth into our lives. Have a beautiful Shabbos.